It's crazy. The e-commerce world is not just growing, it's exploding in popularity and also accessibility, like you say, as well.
There's quite the surge in e-commerce enthusiasm lately, isn't there?
Yeah, it definitely is. We're seeing a huge shift in just how the world of retail operates in general. And I think it's largely driven by the adoption of digital technology. And obviously, as well, a big part of it is the changes in consumer behavior and that increasing confidence from all generations to buy things online now. So it really is moving from a physical shopping world. Going down the high street, you start to see lots of shops closed and being replaced with different shops that aren't necessarily selling physical products a lot of the time, to people now becoming more and more confident and conditioned to order online. So in today's episode, we'll explore why these changes have set the perfect stage for you as a new entrepreneur.
Fantastic. I'm excited to talk about this one. And it's spanned from having conversations with suppliers recently for our own e-commerce businesses. And certainly they're a lot more ready to start dropshipping than they were when I was having these conversations a few years ago. They get it. They understand why we'd want to have a primarily dropshipping e-commerce focused business. So, Lewis, to start us off, could you shed some light on the current landscape, how you see it for the e-commerce market?
Well, it's crazy. The e-commerce world is not just growing, it's exploding in popularity and also accessibility, like you say, as well. You know, it's so much easier now for an e-commerce retailer to get started. If we're thinking about launching a business, there's no better time than now to do so, because there's this surge happening in how consumers are willing to shop, and it's moving to more and more online, which means that newcomer entrepreneurs, aspiring business owners getting started today can enter that market, and that there are more opportunities than ever before to do so. If you think about e-commerce as like a new city that's like being built up and developed, you know what happens? Like you look at just a decade ago, a city like Dubai, for example. I think I was there on holiday in like 2002 or something. It was fairly developed then, but nothing like it is today. As that huge, bustling metropolis town with different roads and infrastructure and sky trains, and like so much has changed and developed in that time that I don't think we'd now look at a city like Dubai and say, oh no, there's no opportunity there anymore. Because of the infrastructure and because of the adoption of that city by businesses, and everyone's moving there, and the tax advantages and all of the things that draw people to that city, I think you could safely argue that there's more opportunity there now than ever. And so it's the same with e-commerce as a sector, as an industry. Because the digital marketplace is continually expanding, evolving, growing, new infrastructures coming in, new software's being developed, it's getting better every year. It just makes it easier for you as a new entrepreneur, as an e-commerce entrepreneur starting your first business, to find your path and to establish yourselves, because you have tools at your disposal now that entrepreneurs of times gone by just didn't have. So the key to this is to recognize that these opportunities are available right now, and it's the best it ever has been right now. And if you understand that landscape, then I feel like I'd be crazy to wait if I was thinking about going into it today. Like today is the day to get into it right now.
Yeah, and that comes from reflecting on our own journeys. I know that I wish I'd started sooner. I had a thought in my mind back in 2021 or 2020 when I first got started in dropshipping. And at that time, I was worried that it wasn't the right time. And I think it's easy to have those thoughts. And probably what it is really is that your mind is trying to slow you down because you're going outside of your comfort zone. And one of those thoughts that we have frequently is whether it's the right time to get started, whether there was a golden era in years gone by. But from being in the industry day to day, I can see how e-commerce is expanding. And I love that vivid picture that you painted of Dubai, because there's more people going and more people shopping, you know, in Dubai and also in the e-commerce world. It means that there's opportunity then for more merchants and more traders to have a really successful business in that environment. So we know that the environment is getting more attractive because more and more people are buying online and the e-commerce market is surging. But what about the barriers to entry? How has that changed? And do you think that it's more accessible now for somebody to start dropshipping compared to a few years ago?
Yeah, 100%. Way more accessible today than ever before in history, because tools and platforms like Shopify, for example, being a prime one that forms the cornerstone of our business as a software tool, it's democratized access to e-commerce. It's as if when Shopify came about, the door to the e-commerce world was kind of unlocked, and it was like opened ajar to the world where suddenly you didn't have to learn how to code a custom website from scratch and like add all of these really complex systems together. It was like, oh, it's all in one platform. And since then, and the development and the growth of Shopify and the engineering and the new innovations, that door has swung wide open. And right now it's the most accessible it's ever been. Imagine the internet as like a giant toolkit, right? Once upon a time, those tools were scarce, they were expensive, and they were maybe hard to find. Now, every tool you need is just a click away. You've got everything at your fingertips with a few pieces of software, often free, because there's a free version that's maybe like got some limitations, but you don't have to start paying until you grow, like the freemium model, as they call it. Nowadays, you really can just leverage platforms' free trials to get started and to make your first few sales, often before you're really paying anything significant. So much lower overheads than starting an offline traditional bricks and mortar business. So it just reduces that initial cost, and it provides you a nice, safe environment, like a sandbox environment to learn, to experiment with your business without taking on heavy financial burdens of debts or huge loans or anything like that. Really, you can get a business like this up and running in a few weeks, especially if you have a step-by-step guide on how to do it.
And that was key for me, realizing that I could get started with a serious business that has huge scaling potential, like dropshipping, like an e-commerce business, without having the huge startup costs that you'd associate with a traditional retail business. Shopify is a great example of that. I know when I first started, I was amazed by how I could create such a professional looking website with just the drag and drop elements that Shopify provide. And then I was showing my website after just a few weeks to a few friends and family, and they were amazed that I'd actually built that and couldn't quite believe that that was accessible to somebody like me with no previous e-commerce or website development experience. And it is, and even now, that was a few years ago. Now Shopify have trials where it's like £1 for the first 3 months, or £1 a month for 3 months. And with that, you can build a very professional looking store. You can accept payments from customers no matter what type of payment they want to give you. And you can then manage the customer's details. You can fulfill orders. You can add products. You've got the whole suite of products available to you at such a low cost. So it just brings that barrier right down. And if you're concerned, if you've got no experience, it holds your hand in a way without having to go and take huge financial risks, without having to be an expert. If you've got the guidance where you know how to click in the right places in Shopify, you can create an incredible business around these tools at such a low cost to get started. So with these developments that we've talked about, what about the customer behaviors that you've noticed, and how does that make it potentially an ideal time to start a business?
Yeah, well, that's the biggest factor, isn't it? There's no point accepting that the digital world has evolved as a seller unless the customers who are willing to pay money towards digital sellers has also evolved. And that behavior has definitely taken a huge shift forwards, specifically in online shopping in recent years. And I think that's been a trend that was supercharged by recent global events, lockdowns and people having to stay home. There was at a certain point no option but to shop online. And so because of that, consumers who maybe weren't so open to it before are now way more comfortable than ever purchasing everything from daily essentials all the way through to high ticket items. And I'd say especially high ticket items, because those sometimes are the most cumbersome things to have to go out and find a specialist retailer for, or to, maybe your car's not big enough to carry the thing that you're buying back to your house. Like, those are the things that I'd say are more convenient for people to buy online, even than the basic cheaper stuff that they might be buying from Amazon. It's as if consumers have moved from browsing the aisles in a supermarket to just surfing web pages now. They're fishing for the best deals, they're looking for unique products, and they're doing it all from the comfort of their homes, usually on their phone as well. We're getting a huge surge in mobile traffic, or mobile and tablet traffic, where people are just not even going to the computer anymore. They're just buying from their phone. With a system like Shopify, then it has Google Pay and Apple Pay baked into the checkout process. So you just press it, Face ID or fingerprint, and you've paid. I mean, I literally just bought something 10 minutes before we got on this podcast, and it's almost too accessible at times. It's dangerously accessible that actually there's such a low barrier to entry. But obviously, as a retailer, as a e-commerce seller, that's fantastic. The the game has never been more rigged in your favor to start than it is today. And according to a recent report by McKinsey, 63% of shopping journeys now start online. That's a huge number, and it really showcases the major shift in consumer behavior towards digital browsing from your phone, but also in actually purchasing habits and getting them over the line to commit to making that purchase.